Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Nick, and today I'm going to talk about something that goes through my head quite often, and that is a comprehensive transit proposal for Southeast Queensland. Now, you may be wondering why I care. Well, let me just show you. Yeah, this. I know it bothers a lot of you. It certainly bothers me. And something about me is I live halfway between Brisbane and Gold Coast. So this proposal helps me get to both places because I'll be honest, I'm over having to travel in peak hour traffic all the time. And also this, $3 billion for just stage one of the Coomera connector. Like, I know there's going to be a shared bike path between Brisbane and Gold Coast. That'll be great. But that's the only sort of accessible transit like outside of cars that's being built for it. Like, why don't we spend that $3 million into having another train line between the two that reduces traffic rather than just adding more after the first 2 years of this opening? So that brings me to this, building a comprehensive Southeast Queensland transit proposal. Now, this will not just be some idealistic version of my own railways that probably aren't that viable. This will be something I have done a lot of research on. I've done a lot of research on Southeast Queensland transit plans for 2031, Gold Coast Light Rail, and understanding what they want and what they're considering for the future, but also what can feasibly be done. Plus, it will include some of my own ideas and some of my own thoughts as well. So it'll be broken down into four stages of before 2035, what can be done before then, 2050, 2065, and 2065 and beyond. So this is the current railways corridor. As you can see through the centre of Brisbane, there's only like one area for trains to go in. And at the moment, I think the main issue Southeast Queensland's having, as much as we want all these extra lines so people are less reliant on cars, there's just not enough services. There's been studies in the past in Australia that the longest waits for passengers in Australia are in Queensland for rail. Like, I live in Ormo, which is just northern Gold Coast, and we get a train every half an hour, and that's all day. Occasionally during peak hour, there might be every 15 minutes, but very little time. And when you're deciding between taking a car and waiting 15 minutes for a train, you're just going to take the car most of the time. Now, the Queensland Government is doing something about this. Cross River Rail is being built, as you can see now. And this opens up quite a bit of the centre of the city and will allow extra services. But there's still a lot of things that can be done, that can be added, that can quicken services, because Brisbane to Gold Coast, 54 minutes, you can get that down to 40 minutes if you really wanted to. Same thing if people are coming from Cleveland or Ferny Grove, they got to wrap around the city quite a bit. You can take time out of that. There's so many different things that can be done, and that's what my next plan will try and rectify. So let's begin. This is stage one of my proposal. Now, in this, first of all, the Beanley Faster Rail project. This is something currently being underdone, set to be done in 2028, probably 2035, knowing the Queensland Government and how everything's playing out. But that will double the track between Brisbane and Beanley, allowing for extra services. They're doing something about that. That's the first priority. The next is the Gold Coast Rail extension. Now, as you can see in the bottom of the map here, there's 3 extra dots in place, and that will be for stations at Reedy Creek, Eleanor, and Gold Coast Airport. Now, I think that is extremely critical for not only Gold Coasters, but like everyone, like on the south side of Brisbane. I think a lot of people would use Gold Coast Airport if they could just get to it without a car. Like, it would, from where I am in Ormo, it would take 35 minutes through train if they built it down there, while taking an hour and a half through train to Brisbane. But with how bad the traffic is on the southern and Gold Coast, it's actually quicker to drive to Brisbane Airport, and that's from northern Gold Coast. It will also be a great connection point for the GC Light Rail, as will a few other things I'm about to talk about, because I guess the issue for Gold Coast Light Rail at the moment is, I think it does a great job with tourists and all that, but it doesn't help a lot of locals, and it does take a significantly long time to get to Surfers Paradise or Southport, when it should be much less. And that leads me into my next point: Gold Coast Light Rail and Brisbane Metro extensions. Now, I haven't included them in this map because they're not heavy rail, but Brisbane Metro they need to have a proper core to build up the Chermside. At the moment, they're building one, I believe, to about Windsor, but they're not going to extend it properly to Chermside. They need to build a corridor to Chermside so people realise how much more efficient, so people actually take that mode of transport and take a much more reliable mode of transport. They also need to extend it from not just Springwood, but down to pretty much Logan Hyperdome. I know that's in their plans, but it's not going all the way to Logan Hyperdome. And if you get it there, then there's plenty of options to take it further south or even to Logan Lee towards the hospital. Onto GC Light Rail. On their plans for the GC Light Rail, they're planning on building spur lines to Harbour Town and Rubina. Now, may I ask why that hasn't been done or why that's not in the plans? I'd almost say that's more critical than building the light rail to the airport when heavy rail would be much preferred for 95% of people. And the reason I say that is because it would be quicker times into Surfers Paradise, be quicker times into Southport, just make things so much easier to get around to all these different hubs. Like if you build that, more people actually use the transit in place because it'll be just much more efficient than what it is now, rather than building the next stage to the airport. But hey, that's not my decision, so let's not go down that rabbit hole. Now for my first rail proposal. This will be for a realignment of the Ferny Grove to Cleveland line. This will quicken services into the city from both areas, taking off 10 to 15 minutes in both directions, and also add a new tunnel to the Queensland train map, which will allow extra services to be added. The new tunnel will be from Morningside to Newmarket, with new stations at New Farm, Albert Street, Roma Street, QT, Kelvin Grove North, and then before realigning at Newmarket. What you may notice though is that there will be less trains going through the main river crossing at the moment, but in the 2050 stage, I'll explain that in more detail. Again, as I will reiterate, the main reason for this is to add an existing track through the centre of the Brisbane CBD that allows for extra services to be added, because as I mentioned earlier, that is the main issue we have at the moment. Once that is sorted, then we can add extra railway tracks. All right, on to 2050. The 2050, the main focus here is to extend on what we've done in 2035 and provide more services in and around southeast Queensland. I'll begin with the Ipswich Faster Rail project. This is a pretty essential project given the growth in Ipswich in the recent years and Springfield. And by doubling the track there means more services can be run out there, but also an extension line towards Ripley and further extended in the future. Now I'll move on to the Logan and Sunshine Coast rail extension. Both rail extensions are proposed in the Queensland Transport 2031 proposal and are utilising the exact same tracks that proposal has there. For Sunshine Coast, that'll be an extension off Beerwah up towards Sunshine Coast Airport, which includes stations at Mooloolaba, Maroochydore, and Caloundra, among others. The Logan extension will extend from Salisbury all the way down to Flagstone, including stations at Acacia Ridge, Cullen Vale, Browns Plains, and Boronia Heights. As I mentioned in the previous video, with taking the Ferny Grove to Cleveland line off the river crossing just the other side of South Bank, it opens up that track to be used for this proposal between Sunshine Coast and Logan. My next three proposals are my own proposals I have made to help travel throughout southeast Queensland. I will begin down on the Gold Coast, where from Coomera to Reedy Creek there will be a new train line. It will be on the eastern side of the current train line, and the main purpose of this is to have heavy rail in parts of the coast which is hard to get to from Brisbane without taking an extra 45-minute tram ride or a 45-minute bus ride. The reason for beginning at Coomera is Coomera is going to become quite a big hub on the northern Gold Coast with the hospital built there in the Westfield and how big Coomera and Pimpernel has grown in the surrounding areas, but also open up another vantage point to get people down to the coast rather than having everyone crammed into trams or buses at Helensvale. For this new rail line, there will be 13 new stations. From Coomera, there will be Coomera East, Hope Island East after the new Hope Island station is built, Paradise Point, Coomera and Harbour Town. Harbour Town will connect to the new spur line off the Gold Coast tram, which will certainly help that will certainly help more people being able to go cross between different sorts of transport. After Harbour Town, it will go towards Labrador, Southport, and Southport is the main CBD of the Gold Coast, where a lot of businesses are located, Australia Fair, and there's about 2 or 3 tram stops within a kilometre there, so that'll be a really good. That'll be quite a bustling area in future years. Ferry Road and Bundle, quite a big business district at the moment and living district, so there's a big need for heavy rail in those vicinities so people can access it without having to drive a car. After that, down towards Mermaid Waters, Bond University, Burleigh Waters and Burleigh Heads. My final 2 proposals for 2050 are based around the Brisbane CBD and access to and around the CBD. I will start with the Gap to Hamilton line. In my opinion, this is probably one of the most important lines to be developed, particularly on the western side of Brisbane CBD. At the moment, if you look to the left of Roma Street towards the west, there is not many stations out there, and the Gap and Ashgrove are quite big living districts without much public transport in that area. So we're going to give them the line that they need. The new stations from the Gap to Roma Street will include the Gap Village, Ashgrove, Barden, Paddington, and Lang Park. Now, I know that last one will raise a few eyebrows because Lang Park is obviously where Suncorp is. Anyone that knows what it's like going to Suncorp knows there's quite a walk to Roma Street, and most people make it because most people are capable of it, but it'd be much easier to have an existing train station right out front that could give you that could take you to many different services. This is all before Roma Street, where it will then connect onto the existing track and head up the Doomben line towards up through Albion, Eel Junction, then all the way down to Doomben, then Hamilton, with the new North Shore precinct going to be the Brisbane's new entertainment hub in the future. The next line I'm going to propose is probably my most, I'd say, controversial line I'll propose, and certainly one that will be up for a lot of debate, and I reckon a lot of people probably don't see the need for it, but I'll put it in here: the Brisbane City Loop configuration. The main purpose of this is so for people to change lines, they don't have to go right into the city. They can stay 3 or 4 lines out, which will take off 10 to 15 minutes of travel. The other reason for it is with the new Cleveland to Ferny Grove line, using the existing track between Morningside and Boggo Road, as well as Newmarket and Windsor, means you already got some of the infrastructure in place, and will also help people moving across lines. This will help people, particularly from the south, trying to get to UQ, but it will also help people from the north and northwest be able to get towards Ipswich quicker, and certainly people from the east get towards the airport quicker as well. It will just cut off times. Now, another part of this city loop, which I was considering, but I did not do given the extra distance we have to go, but I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Would it be worth considering a city loop with a Brisbane business precinct? I think when you hear a lot of other airports in the world, they have a business precinct just outside, or a living precinct just outside the airport. Brisbane Airport, it's like a 7 or 8 minute train ride from Eagle Junction to the international airport, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to transfer there earlier. So I'm just wondering, what would be the possibility of that? Would people like that idea? All right, on to 2065 we go. Through our work so far, we've been able to add extra services and extra tracks into and out of Brisbane CBD, which means more commutes for people and easier accessibility for a lot of people as well. This now allows us to open up our range of what we do and the services we add. I will start with the Yarrabilba extension. Yarrabilba is actually quite a way south of central Logan. If you're going to cross straight east from Yarrabilba, you'd actually end up about 10-15 kilometers away from a Gold Coast suburb. So that's how far south it is. However, that whole section to Yarrabilba is growing very rapidly. About 10 years ago, Yarrabilba was nothing more than scrubland, and now it's a massive housing area. So thus the need for a rail extension. But as someone who went to school, not out in Yarrabilba, but out towards that way, there is an existing track that can be utilized and that can be redone up to add a service out that way. Now, the track doesn't go all that way, and it is only one track, and it's an old track from like 100 years ago. But there is a corridor there that can be used. And that exists from Logan Lee, or where Bethania is, but where Bethania Station is, there's one track line that goes out through there, and that ends up going through Waterford all the way out to Logan Village, and if you add another 5Ks, you end up being at Yarrabilba. So that is what this track is going to be. It's going to include 4 new stations at Waterford, Buchan, Logan Village, and Yarrabilba for future growth. What this does also is it makes Logan Lee a central hub by having that as the main area where people transfer on and off trains as well. As we can see right now, it's used from the Brisbane to Gold Coast Express, and right there you have a hospital, TAFE, I believe Griffith University is around the corner. So we're going to make that the hub of Logan as well. On to the next proposal I have by 2065. This isn't a new railway, but this helps my next project afterwards, but also will be needed with the additional, with the growth on the Sunshine Coast, and that is the Faster Rail project. As with Ipswich, and the reason why they're upgrading the Gold Coast right now, with extra services, with the need for extra services, we need extra tracks. You have to build extra tracks up through the Sunshine Coast by this time if you want to be able to have as many services as possible. And as I just mentioned, this will help support my next proposal. My proposal is tunnels or tracks from Strathpine to Alderley that then connects to Newmarket along the track to Roma Street, joining the Cross River Rail tunnels. Now, in the Queensland Transport 2031 plan, this is actually a proposed alignment, a tunnel from Strathpine to Alderley that then connects onto the Cross River Rail tunnel. Now, the reason why I have it in 2065 is we know full well they're not going to do it for a long time. There are other priorities that the government have in place, adding new highways. But I agree, it should be added. It will better connect the city. Obviously, my plan has already better connected the city, but if the government was real, they'd prioritise this as the next task to get done according to their plan. But in my plan, from Strathpine, there'll be new stations at Castledine West, Bridgeman Downs, McDowell, Everton Park, and Stafford before it gets to Alderley, and then converging to Newmarket, and then the Kelvin Grove line that's on the Cleveland to Ferny Grove line that I proposed, and then before connecting the Cross River Rail Tunnel at Rome Street. On top of the Sunshine Coast Faster Rail project, this will allow more services to be run and also add a vital part of the transport or transit map that is not currently does not have enough services. As I already mentioned, west of Brisbane, but also northwest of Brisbane, outside of the Ferny Grove line, is not properly supported as well supported as it should be. All right, now we're on to 2065. Now for this, these are more of my bolder ideas that I've had for tracks that should be added to the network in years to come. These are not priority tracks, but again, I think there's some very good ideas and very good future thinking on my part here. Some of you might think different though. I will start with the Ripley connection to Coomera via Norwell and Logan Hyperdome. Now, if you're unsure where to look, Ripley is towards Ipswich. It's where the brown and the purple colours meet. This proposal will run tracks from Ipswich to Springfield, then through Browns Plains, where the intersection point is in between Springfield and Loganlea, all the way along to Loganlea. That also includes stops at Marsden and the Logan Events and Entertainment Centre. Once it gets to Loganlea, it'll cross the highway to Logan Hyperdome before having stations at Cornubia, Eagleby, Norwell, Pimpamar East, and then before connecting to Coomera with the new Gold Coast line that I proposed. Now, you might be thinking, what's the point of this? A lot of this is futuristic, and that's what this is about. Norwell right now is nothing more than sugarcane farms. I live 5 minutes away from it. I know what it's like. But if you know anything about what the Queensland Government want to do with the site and what investors want, there's plans for a 60,000 place area for people to work and live just in the back there. The whole area is bigger than Brisbane CBD itself. Thus why thinking how big it could become and how it could become the hub between Brisbane and Gold Coast, between the two CBDs, that there's just going to be train stations there, train tracks there in the future. What this also provides is another connection to Logan Hyperdome other than bus. And it's also a cross-highway connection that's not in the city or down near the Gold Coast, which we don't have, and it will better connect the city. At the moment, the busway goes to 8 Mile Plains, and the next year or two will be down to Springwood, and and then once they upgrade the highway, it'll be pretty much towards Logan Hyperdome. So having the busway connect with train will be quite huge for the growth of Brisbane and being able to have affordable living. I'll move on to my next proposed track, and that is a line from Cleveland that's also connecting at Coomera via Norwell. Now, this might seem odd, but I should have added it a bit earlier. The Cleveland line should be extended to Redland Bay, given you've got Victoria Point, you've got Forelands before you get to Redland Bay. It's quite a big living area. But from where Redland Bay is to Eagleby or Norwell, it's quite literally about 5-10 kilometres over a river. So it's not a big distance, but when you have to drive along the highway and go through Logan just to get out there, it's quite a long drive, and we can cut that shorter by having a train run through there, maybe avoid all the bushland and all that, rather than building roads through there, because that's just going to put wildlife in more danger and take out more land. All right, now my next proposal is something which I think a lot of people travelling up from Gold Coast at the moment to Brisbane or Brisbane to Gold Coast would like to shorten the trip. As we know, they're building the Fast Rail project, which will help take off some time. But we all know that Gold Coast to Brisbane, going through Logan, it's not a direct route to Brisbane. So that's what this next proposal I'm about to do is about to improve. It's to cut the time from Boggo Road to Alternity by a long way by having a direct underground route between the two. What this will also do, add additional tracks on top of, given the extra services that we're having on the Gold Coast and the extra trains that we want to run, it will add an extra little bit. It will add extra tracks for us to run more services and also cater for more people. This will include train stations at Annerley, Tarragindi, Mount Gravatt West, and Robertson. A couple of these hubs are quite big. You service Griffith University, Nathan campus there, but you also, at Mount Gravatt, you'll service a hospital in the region, Greenslopes Hospital, I believe, and along with Nissan Arena and Cusack, among others. Then you can have direct buses that run towards Upper Mount Gravatt busway, and then you could have quite an efficient transit service. Now, that is the final proposal I've put in on this map, but there is something I want to mention because there is some parts of Southeast Queensland which I have missed. Or not so much missed, but like have not made it more direct route, not added transit, and that's really southeast of the city, out towards Carindale in that area. So I was thinking, I don't know how we would go about this or how this would be serviced. Would it run along the Gateway motorway as it is now. But how would people feel about a train service between Logan Hyperdome to Northgate via Springwood, Carindale, Hamilton, and then having a Brisbane Airport park? What this would do is it would quicken times towards Brisbane and getting to the north side of the city as well as Sunshine Coast. So I'm just wondering how would people feel about shortening that time and having extra services through there, and then those people from Carindale and that can hop on, can transfer services when they get to Hamilton or somewhere else to get into the CBD. Now that is it for my proposal, and I thank you all very much for listening. I know it's a bit different. I know it's not the most technically advanced project you'll see on YouTube, but I hope you appreciate the ideas that I've come up with, and I'd like to hear some of yours. If you've got anything that you'd like to add or any services that you want to add because you're affected by something, feel free to comment below. I'd really appreciate all the support. So thank you again. My name's Nicolas Brabazon, and like and subscribe if you want more.